I suppose I got it. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gail Tilstra, and I'll be facilitating our workshop this afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about your interview and basically preparing for your interview. So I've got a little bit, some tips and some information that I would like to share with you. Just to give you a little bit of information about my background, I'm a former human resources executive. I was in human resources for many years, and I did, as part of my role, was a tremendous amount of recruiting. So I do have a lot of background in resume building and interviewing and onboarding. So I'm happy to be a volunteer here at Dress for Success and share some of that information with all of you today. So what we want to focus on is interviewing. And Apollonia, please feel free to, interrupt me and ask me questions. I will share with you too that at the end of the program, by the end of the week, I will send out to all of you an overview of what we talked about today. I mean, again, feel free to take notes, but I also want to share with you that I always have information that goes out after I do one of these workshops. So last time we met, we talked about building your resume and getting that resume in the hands of someone in a company that you're looking to work for. And now they've looked at your resume and they've given you a call and they're asking you to come in for an interview. So an interview can be a very exciting time, but it could also be very nerve-wracking. So my goal for all of you today is to set you up to be successful at your interview in a way that hopefully you'll be one of the candidates that they're going to consider to fill that position. So let's start with how you prepare for an interview. That's number one. When you go in for an interview, you need to be ready to speak in depth about why you want to join the organization. You want to talk about how and why the company's mission resonates with you. You also want to let the interviewer know that the value that you have and what you're going to bring to the organization and to the specific role that you're interviewing for. My suggestion, and this is what we're going to talk about throughout this afternoon, is how you practice those types of interview questions so that you will feel comfortable and confident with yourself and the answers that you give the person that you're interviewing with. I know that sounds kind of funny, but that's what preparing for an interview is all about, being able to know and understand the kind of questions that you're going to be asked and how you're going to answer those. And we're going to spend a little bit of time with that in just a moment. Most importantly, when you're preparing for your interview, you want to do your homework about the organization you're interviewing with. You want to know the culture of the organization and the mission statement, if they have one, and be familiar with the industry overall. I think that's a given. I mean, if you're applying for a job in banking, you're going to make sure you know about banking. If you're applying for a position in an engineering firm, well, you want to know about that industry because you will be asked questions, those types of generalized questions about the industry overall. You also want to make sure that you review the job description, or I'm going to say the job posting, wherever you saw it, whether it be on a job board or LinkedIn, and you want to prepare relevant examples of your achievements and experience. So what you need to do, if you have that job description or if you have that posting, you want to take some time to compile the interview questions that I'm going to share with you later for each of your interviews. And you want to show your interest in the position and the company. So that's why it's not just saying, yes, I'll come in for the interview, but you want to prepare for it. And I'm going to give you some background information about how you do that. And most importantly, I'm going to share with you some questions that they will be asking you. All right. All right. Again, as you prepare for your interview, everyone knows what's most important is dressing for success and looking the part. It would be unprofessional to come to an interview dressed in anything other than business casual. You know, when you put your best foot forward by dressing professionally, it will show the interviewer that you are serious about the position. Ironically, a couple of weeks ago, a woman I've been mentoring contacted me and she said, Gail, as you know, I'm going tomorrow for an interview, but they actually told me that I don't need to dress up because they're a very relaxed company. It's not necessary. What should I do? Should I wear jeans? Well, I have to be honest with you. I said, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put my best pantsuit on, but I would definitely have a pair of slacks and a really nice blouse on, right? She goes, okay, you're right. And you know what she said? She was so glad she did because she felt comfortable and she felt confident. And although there were people in the office in jeans and t-shirts, she was really glad that she didn't. So again, your goal when you interview, as you set foot in that office or department, put your best foot forward and always consider dressing professionally, right? Now, when you get there, All right, of course, you're going to be a nervous wreck. So that's why I want to share these things with you now so you can think about them. And as you go for that interview, you can mentally prepare as well. Really important when you walk in the door and you meet someone for the first time that you're going to interview with, that you use body language in a clear and professional way. And I think everybody knows what I mean, right? You want to sit up straight, you want to smile, you want to use eye contact, all right? I always recommend that when someone approaches you and introduce themselves, hi, I'm Gil Tilstra, I'll be interviewing you today. You extend your hand and shake their hand. I've had people say to me that since COVID, a lot of people are uncomfortable with handshaking. Extend your hand and see what the interviewer does. If they say, no, we don't do that here, well, at least you've made the gesture, and that's what's important. But again, your body language speaks volumes about who and what you are, all right? If you're relaxing your chair with your arms folded, you're going to seem disinterested. So that's why you've got to keep your posture straight and always good eye contact. You know, I've interviewed a lot of men and women who cross their legs and their legs are jumping up and down. Be in control of that, all right? Because your body language, again, speaks volumes, and you want to set the right example. And I know I probably don't have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Make sure your cell phones are turned off. I can't tell you how many interviews I've been in where all of a sudden the cell phone goes off. Most times people are very upset and, so sorry, I forgot to do it. Make sure that you do. I've also had people say to me, would you mind if I take this call? And of course, my answer was, I will, and I would, all right? Make sure your cell phone is turned off. Very important. And I know I can also share with you that I've had situations where people have come in to me to interview with me and say, I'm expecting a phone call. My little one is sick. And I mean, those types of things happen. But you know what? As an interviewer, what I've usually done is I've said to that person, you know what? Why don't we reschedule? If you're so worried about your little one that you're waiting for a phone call, why don't we reschedule so when your little one's feeling better and you're more at ease and you can relax and enjoy the interview. So again, you've got to think through these types of things. That's why I'm sharing this with you today so that you can prepare for your interview ahead of time. Again, we talked about body language. Well, you also have to build rapport. You need to build a personal connection with the person who's interviewing with, all right, that you're interviewing with. I want you all to be yourselves throughout the interview, but let your personality shine. Because as you know, that person that you're speaking to is really the gateway. They're the door that's going to let you into this company, all right? They're the person, if, a lot of companies, you start off by interviewing with a recruiter or a talent acquisition associate. And then if they like your skill set and your background, then they'll send you on for another interview with the manager. So it's really important that you build rapport with the person that you're interviewing with, right? Interviewers are looking to see if you are the right person for the role and an excellent culture addition for the organization. And we all know that's just as important, okay? Skills and qualifications, but are you a good culture fit for the organization? Will you feel comfortable? Do you want to work in the environment that they're going to be providing you? All right. Next, what you want to do is you want to prepare for the questions that they are going to ask you. And I will share with you today some questions. I can also tell you a story. Just a couple of weeks ago, a young woman I'm mentoring actually called me after her interview and she said, Gail, they actually asked me those questions that you shared with me. And most of them nowadays are pretty generic because they're what's called behavioral interview questions. And we're going to get into that in a minute. Most of the questions that you're going to be asked will be specific to the job you're being considered for, right? You want to take the time to identify the qualities of the ideal candidate for that position by looking through a job listing for a list of qualifications. So if you have the job posting, and I have one in front of me right now, I have one for a customer service representative. You want to find keywords that give you a hint as to what the employer wants in a job candidate. Then you're going to match your own qualifications to the job so that you're prepared with examples related to the experience the employer is seeking. So let me give you an example. This is a job posting for a customer service representative, all right? They're looking for someone to provide introductory information to new customers. They want someone who can ensure customers are satisfied with products or services. They want someone that can follow up with clients to check that they're still satisfied with their purchases. They also want someone that will let customers or clients know about new products or services. They're also looking for someone who will work with a team of CSRs and other departments to find appropriate solutions. So this is an overview of what they're looking for. So now what you want to do is you want to take this job description or this job posting and see how you can match your former background to what they're looking for. So for example, the last one, working with a team of CSRs. Well, think back to the jobs you've had before. Have you worked with team members? Have you worked on projects? If you have, jot that down because you want to come up with stories that relate to that item. Or for example, letting customers or clients know about additional products or services. That's sales. Have you been in a role where you've had to sell products to other individuals? If you have, then you want to come up with some stories, okay, good stories about what you did, how well you sold the products or services, all right? Or even have you been in a role, because the first item on this was providing introductory information to new customers. Have you also sat with customers and shared with them information about new products, new services? It could have even been in retail. Was it new clothing articles, whatever it might be? But what I'm trying to share with all of you is that what you want to do is you want to find things that you've done that mirror what they're looking for in that job posting so that you can relate to them and tell the stories. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we build those stories for your interview, right? In interviews today, they're going to focus not only on hard skills, but soft skills. Now, hard skills, I think we all know what hard skills are. Those are skills and talents that can easily be measured. They are usually specific to a particular job, and they can be learned through schooling or on-the-job training, right? But soft skills are a little different, all right? Soft skills are the skills and abilities that are much harder to measure, and they're a bit fuzzier to define. These are interpersonal skills that help people get along with each other and collaborate. So hard skills, for example, here, hard skills would be sales, surgical proficiency, business analysis, bookkeeping, coding, cash flow management, inventory control. Those are things either you've learned through school or have learned through on-the-job training. But soft skills, like I said before, are a little fuzzier, right? I'm not sure that's the most professional word, but that's what they are, right? For example, communication, listening, multitasking, responsibility, innovation, conflict resolution, flexibility, a very big one, all right? Problem solving. These are soft skills. And today, when you go out and interview for positions, there's a tremendous amount of concentration based on your soft skills, all right? You know, it's very easy to say, yes, I have customer service skills. Yes, I've sold products, all right? But they want to know more than just the fact that you did those hard skills. They want to know more about the soft skills that you can bring to the table. You know, what they do now is they work on what's called behavioral interview questions, right? Many interviewers today are using those types of questions. And the idea behind a behavioral interview question is that past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. I'll say that again. I think that makes sense, right? What they're looking for is to what you've done in the past, how that will reflect on what you will do for them in the future, right? So past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. Therefore, examples from your past give the employer an idea of how you would handle a similar situation if you were to be hired by them. So, Apollonia, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely,
Good.
yes.
Yep, good. That's good because that's really what it's all about today. All right. And what you're going to do, and you're going to hear me say this a few more times today. That's why I said you want to tell them a story. That's what you want to do in your interview, right? For example, the interviewer may ask about your past work experience. He or she might say, tell me about a time you had to multitask at work, or give me an example of a conflict you had with an employee. How did you resolve it? Well, of course, multitasking, they're looking for someone that can handle more than one thing at one time, have some flexibility. If they ask you a question about handling a conflict with an employee, it's very possible that you're going to be in a team environment or you're going to be working with a lot of different people, and the interviewer may know that they have all different kinds of personalities. So they want to make sure that you're comfortable with that type of environment. So that's where you're going to develop those types of stories. You know, as I prepared for this program, this is a little over a year ago, I talked to a number of recruiters and I asked them to share with me the 6 soft skills they look for in a candidate, in a successful candidate. And what I want to do is I want to share some of them with you. And then I'm also going to give you some questions. Okay. And again, don't have to write them down. I'm going to give you some of those examples when I send out my notes later today. But the 6
Okay.
soft skills, and you can write these down if you'd like. The 6 soft skills that are really prevalent to hiring managers today are adaptability. And in this environment, boy, that makes all the sense in the world, doesn't it? They need people who are flexible. Culture. It's really important that you fit into the organization's culture. Collaboration, again, teamwork, team efforts, being able to work with different people. Leadership, and I know not everybody's applying for a managerial or supervisory role, but they also want to know what your feelings are. And do you have the potential to be a manager? Do you have the potential to be a leader in this organization? Growth potential, are they hiring someone that's just going to be really happy just putting those widgets in the bucket every day? Or do they want to have somebody that wants to take care of the widgets, or they want to supervise the widget production, or whatever it might be? Okay, so that's growth potential. And most importantly, prioritization. Do you know what comes first? Do you know how to prioritize your responsibilities? So those are the 6 soft skills that are really, I'm going to say, prevalent today in the market. And this is what so many hiring managers are looking for when they're interviewing candidates today. And this is where they base their questions on. So let me give you an example. Talked a little bit about adaptability, being flexible, right? It's very possible they might ask you a question. Tell me about a time when you were asked to do something you had never done before. How did you react, right? Or they might ask, describe a situation in which you embraced a new system, process, technology, or idea that was a major departure from the old way of doing things. Or they could even ask something like, tell me about the biggest change you've had to deal with, right? Especially, again, in this environment, in the past 2 years, you want to talk about changes and new ways of doing things and new technology. They're looking for people that can adapt to that. So again, these are just examples of the types of questions they might ask at your interview. Culture is another very important soft skill and something they focus a lot on. For example, you might be asked, what are 3 things that are most important to you in a job? Or what's the most interesting thing about you that's not on your resume? And the third item I have here is, what would make you choose our company over others, right? A lot of times people talk about the fact that there's something about the company that resonates with them. I can share with you that I worked for an organization that was a Christian-based bank, and they actually tithe 10% of their net profits. I can't tell you how many people I interviewed over the years that were so impressed with that, and they wanted to be a part of that. They wanted to be part of a community bank that reached out to the communities that we serve. That was big for them. So that's what we talk about when we talk about culture. Another big soft skill is collaboration. So you might be asked, give me an example of when you had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. How did you handle it? Or tell me about one of your favorite experiences working with a team and the contributions you made. And another question that you might be asked would be, describe the best partner or supervisors you've worked with. What part of their management style appealed to you? And I will share with all of you that I've asked that question at every interview, because I always thought it was important that I knew that the person I was interviewing for that department would get along well with that manager, and that they would be able to collaborate and work well together as a team. So that was a big question I personally always asked candidates I interviewed. Again, we talked a little bit about leadership, all right? And a good leadership question would be, tell me about a time when you led by example. You don't have to be a leader to do that. You don't have to be the supervisor. Something could come up and your team could be in disarray, and all of a sudden you just take the lead and say, hey, I know what we're doing, and take charge, okay? Or have you made any tough decisions lately? Would you mind sharing? And then another question that might be asked would be, have you ever had to persuade someone to see things your way? And then finally, growth potential. A lot of interviewers today will ask questions like, describe a time when you volunteered to expand your knowledge at work, as opposed to being directed to do so. Or when was the last time you asked for feedback from a supervisor? And then finally, what was the biggest career goal you've ever achieved? And then I know I said that's last, but then prioritization, I forgot that one, I'm sorry. Very simply, you might be asked the question, tell me about a time when you had to juggle several projects at the same time. I think we've all had to do that at one point or another in our careers, right? But what they're going to be looking for is they're going to be looking for you to come up with stories, right? So now you're going to say, Gail, how do I answer these types of questions? So what you need to do is you need to come up with examples from past experiences that have helped you develop the skills and qualities needed for the job. So what you want to do is you want to create a list of maybe 3 to 4 key assets that make you a strong candidate for your job. And then you're going to think of a story of how you've used that strength to add value in some situation. And I have something I'll share with you. It's called the STAR technique. All right. It's a 4-step technique for answering questions about past behaviors at work. Right? STAR, STAR. And very simply put, it stands for situation. You're going to describe the situation or set the scene, explain the place you were working for, or the task you were given. Then you're going to say T is for task, the issue or problem you are confronted with. A is for action. Describe the action you took to intervene in the situation or solve the problem. And then at the end, results are. Describe the results your action generated. Explain how you helped solve the problem or improve the company in some way. That's the STAR technique. So you're going to think of a situation. You're going to think of a task. You're going to think of the action, what you did. And finally, you want to tell that interviewer what the results were. And I'll say this, I said it before, but very simply put, facts tell, but stories sell. So yes, you can say, I have customer service skills. Yes, I've sold products. Yes, I've handled difficult employee problems. Fine, those are facts. But your interviewers want to hear stories. So how did you do that? And that's where the STAR technique comes in. So let me give you an example. What would you do if an angry and dissatisfied customer confronted you? How would you resolve their concern? Employers ask this question to determine whether you have conflict resolution and communication skills required for the role. Use your response to share your ability to be empathetic and address unexpected challenges. So this is a true story. This is a response to that question by someone who I was working with. And this is what she said to the recruiter. When I worked as a receptionist for an auto mechanic, I answered a call from a customer who was angry that their vehicle wasn't finished. I listened to the customer's concerns and used phrases like, I completely understand your frustration. Then I took down their information and promised to call them back. I found the technician who'd been working on their car and learned that the problem was worse than anticipated and would take several days to fix. I coordinated a loaner vehicle for the customer and then called them back. Not only were they appreciative of my help, but they also publicly thanked us on social media. See? So when the customer said, did you have a problem with when the recruiter said, did you have a problem with a customer? She didn't say, oh, yes, I did. And I resolved it. No, she told a story, right? That speaks volumes, all right? That story gives that interviewer an indication of how this person would behave if they were to hire her, all right? Right. Again, I don't know how I'm watching my time, but here's another example. A question was asked, tell me about a time when you were asked to do something you had never done before. How did you react? Using the STAR technique once again, your answer could possibly be, in my last role as marketing coordinator, my manager asked me to build and launch a digital ad campaign, which is something I'd never done before. I explained to my manager that I had no experience in leading that type of project, but volunteered to do all of the work if someone more experienced could offer guidance. I met with several employees who had experience running digital ads, studied best practices, and successfully launched the campaign. Thanks to that hands-on learning experience, I became the team expert on digital advertising. Again, what a great answer. That's a story. Facts tell, right? But stories sell. Really important. Now, I know so many times too, recruiters will ask 2 famous questions, which I'm not a fan of, but I'll share them with you anyhow. Number 1, they usually ask, what would you say are your greatest strengths? Well, that's an easy one to answer. But the one that's not so easy to answer is, what would you say is a weakness for you, right? And I always feel that's kind of a question that traps people. So I want you to be prepared for those types of questions, because believe me, they're going to ask you, all right? But when you ask answer those types of questions that are asked of you, what you want to do is you want to put a positive spin on your answer. Okay. So for example, what if you said something like, well, what's one of your weaknesses? And you said, I focus too much on details. All right. But if you answered it this way, my greatest weakness is that I sometimes focus too much on details of a product and spend too much time analyzing the finer points. I've been striving to improve in this area by checking in with myself at regular intervals and giving myself a chance to refocus on the bigger picture. That way I can still ensure quality without getting so caught up in the details that affects my productivity or the team's ability to meet deadlines, right? So yes, she spends too much time on details, but she's learning, okay, to overcome that by checking in with herself and keeping checkpoints, all right? Or what if you said something like here, a big question is when you talk about a weakness, people say, I sometimes lack confidence, right? I think we all do in one way, shape, or form. So what if you answered the question, in the past, I've sometimes struggled with confidence, and it's been helpful for me to keep a running document of the impact I have made on my team and at my organization to better understand why I should be confident about the skills and unique talents I bring to the table. I also have made it a point to voice my ideas and opinions during meetings when I feel that they are appropriate and will add value to the conversation. She ends up by saying that she actually offered an opportunity to change something, a new finance process, which resulted in a 10% decrease in time taking to plan the annual budget. So when you're asked those types of questions, you have to sit back. And that's why I want all of you to prepare for those types of questions, because you will be asked them. All right. And I want you to answer them in a positive way. So you want to take that and put a positive spin on it. We all have weaknesses. And when you're asked that, say something in a way that lets the interviewer know that you're definitely working on it. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Right. Very true, isn't it? All right. And here's one more question that I'm not a big fan of either, but I'm going to share it with all of you because I know you're going to be asked this question. All right. Here's the one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? We've all heard that, haven't we? We all have. You know,
Yep.
I have to tell you that I asked that question once, and I normally don't during an interview. And somebody looked at me and said, I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. What do you mean, where am I going to be in 5 years? Okay. All right. But what you're looking for is, the reason they ask that is, do your expectations match what the company can provide? Do you have a sense of drive and ambition? Do you see yourself at that company in 5 years? And number 5, are you truly interested in that position? Okay. That's the reason why they asked that question. And for example, I have an answer that I received once during an interview, and I always remember that this person said to me, Gail, it's only been 2 years since I graduated and began working, but I'd say that my goal in 5 years is to see significant growth in my sales skills. One of my longer term career goals is to be involved in sales training and mentoring, maybe as a manager or corporate trainer. But I know the first step is to master the day-to-day work. So in the next 5 years, I look forward to continuing to build my sales skills. It seems like this position would offer some great challenges and learning opportunities for someone like myself. Perfect answer. It really, really is. Okay. Somebody else said to me, I'm interested in research and development and field of cybersecurity. I admire the company's role in building robust security systems to prevent cybercrime. In the next 5 years, I want to make my own contributions to the development of solutions, and I'm excited about the opportunity this role provides for strengthening my skills. Right. So again, those are questions that I said that I'm not fond of, but they will be asked of you. So again, behavioral interview questions, right? Let's recap. You're going to work with the STAR technique: situation, task, action, result. When it comes to what's your weaknesses, you're going to answer in a positive way. All right. In 5 years, come up with an answer to your 5-year plan. Where will you be in 5 years? Okay. And don't say, I don't know what I'm having for dinner. Teasing you. Now it's your turn to ask questions. All right. Very important. And again, you need to be prepared. It's as an interviewer. All right. I want to hear that you have questions that you want to address to me. So for example, you might say something like, what do the day-to-day responsibilities of this role look like? Or you can ask, what are the company's values? What characteristics do you look for in employees in order to represent those values? You can ask the recruiter, what's your favorite part about working for this company? Or what does success look like in this position, and how do you measure it? In other words, okay, how will I be measured? How will you evaluate my performance? Are there opportunities for professional development? And so, if so, what they look like? And that's an important question, because today it is more important than ever that companies develop their employees. Right? I say this all the time. You know, if you ask people today, what are 2 reasons why they leave an organization? It's not money. It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with, one, being recognized for doing a good job, and talent and development, being offered the opportunity to grow and to learn new things. So that's a very good question that you should be asking during your interview. You might want to ask, who will I be working most closely with? And you also might want to ask, what do you see is the most challenging aspect of this job, right? Is there anything that any of you can share about questions that you might have been asked during an interview, or that you've asked during an interview, I should say? I'm sorry. Okay. No, anything that you remember?
Okay. It's been a while. I don't remember.
Has it?
Yeah.
Well, again, my job today is to prepare everyone, okay, for the types of questions you're going to be asked in interviews today. Now, what I want to do is, and I guess I want to make all of you laugh, but believe me when I tell you, these are true things that have happened in interviews. But I compiled a small list of things you never say during a job interview, so I have to throw them out at you. All right. One is, so tell me, what do you do around here? We don't ask that. Or, I didn't get along with my boss. Or you never say something like, I'm really nervous. You may be really nervous, and you probably will be nervous, but you don't let the recruiter know you are. I've had people say, I'll do whatever. We don't say that during an interview. I know I don't have much experience, but no, you always come across confident and understanding of the job, and make sure that you've got those stories that you can tell about what you can do for the company. I've had people say, when I've asked a question, their response was, oh, it's on my resume. You know what? I know it's on your resume. I want to hear it from you. I want to hear what you have to say about what you've done. I've had people say perfectionism is my greatest strength. And I've also had people say perfectionism is my greatest weakness. We don't say that during an interview, all right? And then it's so important that you're careful of how you do speak. I increased our social following, 24%. We don't talk like that. We have to be very cognizant of how we deliver our answers, right? Or we've had responses where someone has said, I built a synergistic network of strategic alliances. Well, what does that mean, right? So you've got to make sure that you're talking in a language that everyone can understand. And I know in banking especially, we use a lot of synonyms, like CFT, STF, ORB. You don't want to use those during an interview, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're talking to is going to understand what you're talking about, all right? Or we don't ask something like, how much vacation time do I get? Or how soon do you promote employees? Or if they ask if you have questions, you don't answer, nope, no questions. You will always have questions. You have to have questions, all right? All right. And again, we talked, I should have touched in the beginning, but you never want to be too early for an interview, but you never want to be late for an interview, okay? Because I know a lot of times people are very prompt, and if your interview's at 9 a.m. in the morning, you don't want to be there 8:30. You want to be there 8:50, because if you're sitting there, the interviewer's got things to do as well. So you want to be there at least 10 minutes, but no more, okay? And you never want to be late, all right, for an interview. And those are just a few ideas of what you don't say during an interview. And what I want to end up with right now is following up with your emails, okay? Are there any questions at all before we talk about follow-ups with your emails, about interview questions, or using the STAR technique, or the questions that you should answer, weaknesses, strengths, anything like that? Okay, so let's.
Can you
Yes.
ask, are there room for growth? Can you ask a question like that or no?
Absolutely. Yes, that's an excellent question, which is what we said a few minutes ago, because you want to be in an organization, that's not stagnant, right? You don't want to just sit there and do the same job. The job you're looking for, you want to know that there's growth potential. And how will that happen? That's a great question to ask. Absolutely. You know, they may think, well, they may share with you, well, you might have to go to school, or you might have to take a training class, or as you learn one thing, you could say, once I learn to do this, will I have an opportunity to go to another area of the department and learn that role as well? That's a very good question to ask, right? Because you want more. Everyone hopefully wants more than just the job that they're applying for. But you also want to know that the company is going to give it to you, right? Because
Mhm.
if they're not, then that may second guess your thoughts of wanting to work for that company. Absolutely. No, that's a good question to ask. Anything else? Okay. No, I want to just, like I said, finish up with what I call the follow-up emails. Very, very important that as soon as you leave that interview, remember we talked about shaking hands, you're going to thank them for their opportunity. Okay. Make sure that everything's cleared up. And a lot of times during the interview too, they will talk a little bit about vacation time, benefits, things like that. All right. I always talk to during when we build our resume, we talked about references. They may ask you for your references at the end, or they may ask you to send them afterwards. You know, every company has their own way of doing things, all right? But you want to make sure, no matter what, that you leave that interview on a very positive note. Very, very important. Okay. And then you might shake their hand and say, hope to be hearing from you and thank you for the opportunity and have a good day. And as soon as you can, you want to sit down at your computer and write your follow-up email. You know, some people still send letters, but I know for the most part, it is a follow-up email. And in general, there are 3 kinds of follow-up emails. One to the interviewer, or it could be interviewers immediately afterwards. You know, you may have met with 2 people that day, 3 people, I don't know. Maybe you just met with 1 person. Then there's a second follow-up email if you have not heard back, which I recommend sending. And then a third one is what I call a check-in. So it's very possible that that third one means you're not going to get the job, but you still want to stay on their radar, if you know what I'm saying, right? You may not necessarily have been hired for the job you interviewed with, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to contact you for a different opportunity. And I've had that happen a lot with people that I've mentored. You know, they were a little disappointed that they didn't get the job. And next thing I know, a couple of weeks later, they've called me and said, Gail, that company called me back and I have another job. I said, well, go for the interview. Why not? Of course. All right. So that's why it's important to stay on their radar. Right. In the best case, you only need to send 1 email and a note of thanks for your interviews. All right. So when you build your email, okay, for this thank you email, you want to start by choosing the right subject. You want to thank
Mhm.
them for their time. You want to thank them for the opportunity regarding the position that you interviewed for, right? And again, you open up your first paragraph with a thank you, and you're going to mention the job title, and you're going to thank the interviewer for their time, and you're going to express your interest in the job and the company. In the second paragraph, you're going to note the company's name as well, all right, as a conversation point or a goal that seemed especially important to the person you spoke with. Do you know what I'm saying? There was something that maybe you both spoke about during your interview. You want to connect the dots, so to say. You want to, because that's what's going to make that interviewer think, oh, I remember that person. I remember her. Yes, we did talk about the marketing plan, or we did talk about that new product that we're going to launch. You need to connect the dots. Because just like building your resume, where I've told all of you, you want to stand out, I want all of you to stand out in your interviews. And I also want you to stand out in your follow-up emails. You want to trigger that response. You have no idea how many people they could interview. 5 people, they could have interviewed 25 people. So you want to make sure your follow-up email reminds them of who you are. And you want to get as specific as possible while keeping it short and to the point, right? Again, just like I said a second ago, you're going to set yourself apart from other candidates. In the final paragraph, you're going to close with a summary statement on what sets you apart as a candidate and what you'll bring to this opportunity. Invite them to ask you for more additional information, and you're going to close by saying you're looking forward to hearing back from them. Just like you did when you walked out of the office and you shook their hand, you're going to say that as well in your follow-up email and with your signature and your contact information. All right. Here, I'll give you a brief example of what a good follow-up email would look like. Ms. Olson, thank you for taking the time to speak with me about the marketing coordinator role. It was great to meet with you and learn about the position. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join Horizon Marketing, and I'm particularly interested in details you shared about the upcoming launch of the brand campaign. I'm enthusiastic about the prospect of taking on some of the project management and bringing my experience in coordinating the company's initiative to the table. See, they talked about that. That's the connected dots paragraph. Okay. That interviewer is going to say, oh, I remember this person. I remember Susan. Okay. After our conversation, I am confident that my background in marketing and my interest in brand growth will enable me to fill the job requirements effectively and support the vision of Horizon. Please feel free to contact me if I can provide you with any further information. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. And then you sign your name and your email address. And that is your follow-up email. Okay. Again, if need be, if you haven't heard, okay, you send a second email and you send it, I guess, a few days. Well, I don't know. They might even tell you when you're interviewing how long it's going to take for a decision to be made. So a lot's going to be determined by that time frame. But if it's been a little bit of a while and you have not heard, you can send a follow-up email. All right. And just again, to the point. All right. Just reminding them that you still are very interested in a job opportunity. Right. And I do know, and I hear this from everyone that I talk to, that it's so disappointing that so many recruiters, so many interviewers, don't get back to their people. I know. And if I could share that message to everybody that I talk to on the interviewing side, I'd tell them how important it is not to leave candidates waiting, but to at least give them an answer, yes or no. Okay. So that's a disappointment. I know it is on everybody's point. And again, the third email is if you have not heard, or even if you had heard that someone else received a position, you could still say, thank you again for the opportunity. Just want you to know if anything opens up that you feel my background is qualified for, do not hesitate to call me. Okay, so that's the 3 emails, okay, that you send. All right, so let's do this. Let's recap, and then I'll open the floor for some questions. What we talked about today, preparing for your interview, right? We're gonna prepare. We're gonna know the company. We're gonna know the job. We're gonna make sure that we have our own questions in our mind about how we're gonna answer those questions with our answers. We're gonna dress professionally. All right. When we're in that interview, we're gonna use body language in a clear, professional way, sitting up straight, smile, use eye contact. We're going to build rapport, right? Very, very important to build that rapport because that person is the gateway to that company. And we're going to turn off our cell phones, right? We also talked about today different types of questions that you're going to be asked, but with a focus on behavioral interview questions, because behavioral interview questions are what? They want to know what you did in the past, how that's going to be indicative of what you can do in the future, all right? And when you start to formulate your own questions based on the job description and your previous background, you're going to use what? You're going to use the STAR technique: situation, task, action, result. You need to come up with lots and lots of stories. That's what you need to do. So if I'm going to give anybody homework, that's what the homework's going to be, to develop those questions. And remember, facts tell, but stories sell. And then make sure you also have your own list of questions for when it's your turn to ask questions. And then you're going to follow up with a thank you email to send after your interview. All right. So that's how we prepare. That's how we focus. That's how we go through an interview. Any questions or concerns?